Hola, Wang CC. Greetings, Maria. Rincon. Namaste, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mir, ni hao, buenos dias, buenos tardes, heseche, aquaba, welcome, what up, though. Blessings to you and your family. The story I have to share today is an ancient story. Levels again. An ancient story of Yosef, Aveinu, Joseph. So Joseph is, or Yosef, the Hebrew articulation and pronunciation of his name. Yosef is the 11th son of Yaakov, of Jacob, of the 12 tribes of Jacob, the 12 tribes of Israel. And so he's actually the favored son of the father. And because of that, the brothers don't like him. And the story narrates his travails with his brothers and what happens after that, and then the redemptive portion of it. So this articulation or this rendering of the story actually comes directly from Torah, from the book of Moshe, Genesis, Bereshit. So it's a little lengthy. So to be honest, I'm not sure how long it's going to take. And I actually have something else to share after this. So we'll see. I have to have those parts to this joint. So that's pretty much the story. Like I said, it is a story. It's not like doctrine of like do this, don't do that, which is beneficial in and of itself. But this is just a narrative, like a legit story. It does have a certain sequence towards the end of blessings and like foreshadowing or prophesying about what happens with all the sons. But it's the aggregate is a story, and it's the concluding portion of the book of Genesis or Bereshit within Hebrew. So that being said, get into it. I actually do, because it's towards one of the holy scriptures that I study from and that I practice. There's a blessing that I recite before reading from it, so I'm doing that here as well. Now this blessing is actually a compilation of blessings from many different traditions and languages, but it's basically like giving thanks and saying peace and blessings to all beings. So again, it's part of my practice. So that's a whole nother story in and of itself. I call it the 7-layer berecha. Berecha means blessing, and it's 7 layers because it's like 7 components to it. So, anyways, here it is. Oh, I mentioned I showed the books before: Torah Badi Gokadao, Torah Bhagavad Gita, Diganakai, Dhammapada, Gospels, Quran, Tao Te Ching. So I showed the hard copies of it, like the formal copies of the formal publications. This is a project that we complete through the auspices of Sona Ashram within recent years, which is a compilation of all these, but in each one's original language. So there's that element of learning, and additionally, so there it is. Now I'm going to say the blessing and also check levels. All right. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahu Akbar. Deus nos te qui es in celis, sanctificato nomen tuum, vahegu satnam. Dao Kudao Fe Chong Dao. Ja. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kezanu bo mitzvotav v'zivan l'sok b'davai Torah. Amen. Kyrie eleison. Siva mastu sabajigatahi. Sabe sata b'avantu sukitata. Fagabir. Ubuntu. Shabama. Fekako. Akwaba. Upendo na amani. Umejeka. Shishe. Kamosanida. Domo arigato. Pilama yela wakantamo. Talk adokashingu. God, we thank you for all that you bless us. Kumanagan. Ata jamia yat afnani. Aho. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Amen. also being mindful of the precipitation because you don't want to get these joints wet. All right, here we go. Again, as like a translation, Yaakov means Jacob. He's the father, the far. Yosef means Joseph. He's the 11th son. Yehuda means Judah. So he's one of the elder brothers. And I think Shimon means Simon. I think those are the translations between English and Hebrew. So here it is. Just to be specific, it is Bereshit 37:1 to chapter 50:26. So it's Genesis 37:1 to 50:26. Let's see how we can do this. All right, here we go. Yaakov dwelt in the land of his fathers' sojournings, in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Yaakov. When Yosef was 17 years old, being a shepherd, he was with his brothers with the flocks, and he was a lad, and was with the sons of Bilhah, and with the sons of Zilpah, his far's wives. And Yosef brought evil tales about them to their far. And Israel loved Yosef further than all his sons, because he was a son of his old age, and he made him a fine woolen coat. And his brothers saw that their far loved him further than all his brothers, so they hated him, and they could not speak with him peacefully. And Yosef dreamed a dream, and told his brothers, and they continued to hate him. And he said to them, listen now to this dream which I have dreamed. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the midst of the field, and behold, my sheaf arose and also stood upright. And behold, your sheaves encircled it and prostrated themselves to my sheaf. So his brothers said to him, will you reign over us, or will you govern us? And they continued further to hate him on account of his dreams and on account of his words. And he again dreamed another dream, and he related it to his brothers, and he said, behold, I have dreamed another dream. And behold, the soleil, the moon, and the 11 stars were prostrating themselves to me. And he told it to his far and to his brothers. And his far rebuked him and said to him, what is this dream that you have dreamed? Will we come, I, your more, and your brothers, to prostrate ourselves to you to the ground? So his brothers envied him, but his far awaited the matter. And his brothers went to pasture their far's flocks in Shechem. And Israel said to Yosef, are your brothers not pasturing in Shechem? Come, I will send you to them. And he said to him, here I am. So he said to him, go now, and see to your brothers' well-being of the flocks, and bring me back word. So he sent him off from the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. Then a man found him, and behold, he was straying in the field. And the man asked him, saying, what are you looking for? And he said, I'm looking for my brothers. Tell me now, where are they pasturing? And the man said, they have traveled away from here, for I overheard them say, let us go to Dotan. So Yosef went after his brothers, and he found them in Dotan. And they saw him from a distance, and when he had not yet drawn near to them, they plotted against him to put him to death. So they said to one another, behold, that dreamer is coming. So now let us kill him, and we will cast him into one of the pits, and we will say, a wild beast devoured him, and we will see what will become of his dreams. But Reuben heard, and he saved him from their hands. And he said, let us not deal with him a deadly blow. And Reuben said to them, do not shed blood. Cast him into this pit, which is in the desert, but do not lay a hand upon him, in order to save him from their hands, to return him to his far. Now it came to pass, when Yosef came to his brothers, that they stripped Yosef of his shirt, of the fine woolen coat which was upon him, and they took him and cast him into the pit. Now the pit was empty, there was no water in it. And they sat down to eat a meal, and they lifted their eyes and saw, and behold, a caravan of Ishmaelites was coming from Gilead, and their camels were carrying spices, balm, and lotus, going to take it down to Egypt. And Yehuda said to his brothers, what is the gain if we slay our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites. But our hand shall not be upon him, for he is our brother, our flesh. And his brothers hearkened. Then Midianite men, merchants, passed by, and they pulled and lifted Yosef from the pit. And they sold Yosef to the Ishmaelites for 20 silver portions, and they brought Yosef to Egypt. And Reuben returned to the pit, and behold, Yosef was not in the pit, so he rent his garments. And he returned to his brothers, and said, the boy is gone, and where will I go? And they took Yosef's coat, and they slaughtered a kid, and dipped the coat in the blood. And they sent the fine woolen coat, and they brought it to their far. And they said, we have found this, now recognize whether it's your son's coat or not. He recognized it, and he said, it is my son's coat, a wild beast has devoured him. Yosef has surely been torn up. And Yaakov rent his garments, and he put sackcloth on his loins, and he grieved for his son many days. And all his sons and all his daughters arose to console him, but he refused to be consoled. For he said, because I will descend on account of my son as a griever to the grave, and his father wept for him. And the Midianites sold him to Egypt, to Potiphar, Pharaoh's chamberlain, chief of the slaughterers. Now it came about at that time that Yehuda was demoted by his brothers, and he turned away until he came to an Adullamite man named Hira. And there Yehuda saw the daughter of a merchant named Shua, and he took her and came to her. And she conceived and bore a son, and he named him Er. And she conceived again and bore a son, and she named him Onan. Once again she bore a son, and she named him Shelah, and Yehuda was in Chezib when she gave birth to him. And Yehuda took a wife for Er, his firstborn, named Tamar. Now Er, Yehuda's firstborn, was evil in the eyes of the Lord, and the Lord put him to death. So Yehuda said to Onan, come to your brother's wife and perform the rite of Levirate, and raise up progeny for your brother. Now Onan knew that the progeny would not be his, and he came to his brother's wife. He wasted his semen on the ground in order not to give seed to his brother. Now what he did was evil in the eyes of the Lord, and Adonai put him to death also. Then Yehuda said to his daughter-in-law Tamar, remain as a widow in your father's house until my son Shelah grows up. For he said, lest he too die like his brothers. So Tamar went, and she remained in her father's house. Many days passed, and Shua's daughter, Yehuda's wife, died. And Yehuda was consoled, and he went up to watch over his sheep shearers, he and Hira, his Adullamite friend, to Timnah. And it was told to Tamar, saying, behold, your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep. So she took off her widow's garb, covered her head with a veil, and covered her face, and she sat down at the crossroads that were on the way to Timnah, for she saw that Shelah had grown up, but as for her, she was not given to him for a wife. When Yehuda saw her, he thought she was a harlot, because she covered her face. So he turned aside towards her to the road, and he said, get ready now, I will come to you. For he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. And she said, what will you give me that you should come to me? And he said, I will send a kid from the herd. And she said, only if you give me a pledge until you send it. So he said, what is the pledge that I should give you? And she said, your signet, your cloak, and the staff that is in your hand. So he gave them to her, and he came to her, and she conceived his likeness. Then she arose and went away, and she took off her veil and donned her widow's garb. And Yehuda sent the kid by the hand of his Adullamite friend to take the pledge from the woman's hand, but he did not find her. So he asked the people of the place, saying, where is the harlot who was at the crossroads on the way? And they said, no harlot was here. So he returned to Yehuda, and he said, I have not found her. And the people of the place also said, no harlot was here. So Yehuda said, let her take them for herself, lest we become a laughingstock. Behold, I sent this kid, but you did not find her. Now it came about, after nearly 3 months, that it was told to Yehuda, saying, your daughter-in-law Tamar has played the harlot, and behold, she is pregnant from harlotry. So Yehuda said, bring her out, and let her be burned. She was taken out, and she sent to her father-in-law, saying, from the man to whom these belong, I am pregnant. And she said, please recognize whose signet, ring, cloak, and staff are these. Then Yehuda recognized them, and he said, she is right, it is from me, because I did not give her to my son Shelah. But he no longer continued to be intimate with her. And it came about at the time she was giving birth, that behold, there were twins in her womb. And it came about that when she gave birth, that he, the infant, stretched out his hand. So the midwife took and bound a crimson thread on his hand, saying, this one came out first. And it came about, as he was drawing back his hand, behold, his brother emerged. And she said, with that strength you have strengthened yourself. And he, Yehuda, named him Perez. Afterwards his brother emerged, the one upon whose hand was the crimson thread, and he named him Zerah. Now Yosef had been brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, Pharaoh's chamberlain, chief of the slaughterers, an Egyptian man, purchased him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him down there. The Lord was with Yosef, and he was a successful man, and he was in the house of his Egyptian master. And his master saw that the Lord was with him, and whatever Yosef did, the Lord made prosper in his hand. And Yosef found favor in his eyes, and he, Yosef, served him, and he, Potiphar, appointed him over his house, and all he had he gave into his hand. Now it came to pass that since he had appointed him over his house and over all that he had, the Lord blessed the house of the Egyptian for Yosef's sake. And the blessing of the Lord was in all that he had, in the house and in the field. So he left all that he had in Yosef's hand, and he knew nothing about what was with him, except the bread he ate. And Yosef had handsome features and a beautiful complexion. Now it came to pass after these events that his master's wife lifted up her eyes to Yosef, and she said, lie with me. But he refused, and he said to his master's wife, behold, with me my master knows nothing about anything in the house, and all he has given into my hand. In this house there is no one greater than I, and he has not withheld anything from me except you, insomuch as you are his wife. Now how can I commit this great evil and sin against God? Now it came about, when she spoke to Yosef day in and day out, that he did not obey her to lie beside her and to be with her. And it came about on a certain day that he came to the house to do his work, and none of the people of the house were there in the house. So she grabbed him by his garment, saying, "Lie with me." But he left his garment in her hand and fled and went outside. Now it happened, when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and he had fled outside, that she called to the people of her house and she spoke to them, saying, Look, behold us. He brought us a Hebrew man to mock us. He came to me to lie with me, but I called loudly. And it happened that when he heard that I raised my voice and called out, he left his garment beside me, and he fled and went outside. So she left his garment beside her until his master came home. And she told him the same thing, saying, The Hebrew slave that you brought to us came to me to mock me. And it happened, when I raised my voice and called out, that he left his garment beside me and fled outside. Now it came about, when his master heard his wife's report, that she spoke to him, saying, Your slave did such things to me, that his wrath burned. So Yosef's master took him and put him into prison, the place where the king's prisoners were imprisoned, and he was there imprisoned. The Lord was with Yosef, and Adonai extended charisma to him, and Adonai gave him favor in the eyes of the warden of the prison. So the warden of the prison delivered all the prisoners who were in the prison into Yosef's hand, and whatever they did there, he was the one who did it. The warden of the prison did not inspect anything that was in Yosef's hand, for the Lord was with him, and whatever he did, the Lord made prosper. Now it came about after these events that the cupbearer of the king of Egypt and the baker sinned against their master, against the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh became incensed at his two chamberlains, at the chief cupbearer and at the chief baker. And he placed them in the prison of the house of the chief of the slaughterers, into the prison, the place where Yosef was imprisoned. And the chief of the slaughterers appointed Yosef to be with them, and he served them, and they were a year in prison. Now both of them dreamed a dream, each one his dream on the same night, each man according to the interpretation of his dream, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were confined in the prison. And Yosef came to them in the Matan, and he saw them, and behold, they were troubled. And he asked Pharaoh's chamberlains who were with him in the prison of his master's house, saying, Why are your faces sad today? And they said to him, We have dreamed a dream, and there is no interpreter for it. Yosef said to them, Don't interpretations belong to God? Tell them to me now. So the chief cupbearer related his dream to Yosef, and he said to him, In my dream, behold, a vine is before me, and on the vine are 3 tendrils, and it seemed to be blossoming, and its buds came out. Then its clusters ripened into grapes. And Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I placed the cup on Pharaoh's palm. And Yosef said to him, This is its meaning. The 3 tendrils are 3 days. In another 3 days Pharaoh will number you with the other officers, and he will restore you to your position, and you will place Pharaoh's cup into his hand, according to your previous custom when you were his cupbearer. But remember me when things go well with you, and please do me a favor and mention me to Pharaoh, and you will get me out of this house. For I was stolen from the land and the Hebrews. I was stolen from the land of the Hebrews, and here too I have done nothing, for which they have put me into the dungeon. Now the chief baker saw that he had interpreted well, so he said to Yosef, Me too. In my dream, behold, there were 3 wicker baskets on my head. In the topmost basket were all kinds of Pharaoh's food, the work of a baker, and the birds were eating them from the basket atop my head. And Yosef replied and said, This is its meaning. The 3 baskets represent 3 days. In another 3 days, Pharaoh will remove your head from you and hang you on a gallows, and the birds will eat your flesh off you. Now it came about on the 3rd day, Pharaoh's birthday, that Pharaoh made a feast for all his servants, and he counted the chief cupbearer and chief baker amongst his servants. And he restored the chief cupbearer to his position as cupbearer, and he placed the cup on Pharaoh's palm. And the chief baker he hanged, as Yosef had interpreted to them. But the chief cupbearer did not remember Yosef, and he forgot him. It came to pass at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh was dreaming, and behold, he was standing by the Nile. And behold, that from the Nile were coming up 7 cows of handsome appearance and robust flesh, and they pastured in the marshland. And behold, 7 other cows were coming up after them from the Nile, of ugly appearance and lean of flesh. And they stood beside the cows which were on the Nile bank. And the cows of ugly appearance and lean of flesh devoured the 7 cows that were of handsome appearance and healthy. Then Pharaoh awoke. And he fell asleep and dreamed again, and behold, 7 ears of grain were growing on one stalk, healthy and beneficial. And behold, 7 ears of grain, thin and beaten by the east wind, were growing up after them. And the thin ears of grain swallowed up the 7 healthy and full ears of grain. And then Pharaoh awoke, and behold, a dream. Now it came to pass in the Matan, the AM, that his spirit was troubled. So he sent and called all the necromancers of Egypt and all its sages, and Pharaoh related to them his dream, but no one interpreted them for Pharaoh. Now the chief cupbearer spoke with Pharaoh, saying, I call to mind my faults today. Pharaoh was angry with me, with his servants, and he put me in prison in the house of the chief slaughterer, me and the chief baker. And we dreamed a dream on the same night, I and he, each one according to the interpretation of his dream we dreamed. And there with us was a Hebrew lad, a slave of the chief slaughterer. And we told him, and he interpreted our dreams for us. For each of us he interpreted according to his dream. And it came to pass that just as he had interpreted, so it was. Me he restored to my position, and him he hanged. So Pharaoh sent and called Yosef, and they rushed him from the dungeon, and he shaved and changed his clothes. And he then came to Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Yosef, I have dreamed a dream, and there is no interpreter for it, but I have heard it said of you that you understand a dream to interpret it. And Yosef replied to Pharaoh, saying, Not I, God will give an answer, that will bring peace to Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Yosef, In my dream, behold, I was standing on the bank of the Nile, and behold, 7 cows of robust flesh and a handsome form were ascending from the Nile, and they pastured in the marshland. And behold, 7 other cows were ascending after them, emaciated and of very ugly form, and with meager flesh. I have not seen such ugly ones throughout the entire land of Egypt. And the meager and ugly cows devoured the first 7 healthy cows. And they went inside them, but it was not known that they had gone inside of them, for their appearance was as ugly as in the beginning. Then I awoke. Then I saw in my dream, and behold, 7 ears of grain were growing on one stalk, full and beneficial. And behold, 7 ears of grain, hardened, thin, and beaten by the east wind, were growing up after them. And the thin ears of grain swallowed up the 7 beneficial ears of grain. I told the necromancers, but no one tells me its meaning. And Yosef said to Pharaoh, Pharaoh's dream is one. What God is doing, Adonai has told Pharaoh. The 7 beneficial cows are 7 years, and the 7 beneficial ears of grain are 7 years. It is one dream. And the 7 meager and ugly cows coming up after them are 7 years. And the 7 empty ears of grain beaten by the east wind will be 7 years of famine. It is this matter that I have spoken to Pharaoh. What God is about to do, Adonai has shown Pharaoh. Behold, 7 years are coming, great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt, and 7 years of famine will arise after them, and all the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine will destroy the land. And the plenty will not be known because of that famine to follow, for it will be very severe. And concerning the repetition of the dream to Pharaoh twice, that is because the matter is ready to emanate from God, and God is hastening to execute it. So now let Pharaoh seek out an understanding and wise man, and appoint him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this, and appoint officials over the land, and prepare the land of Egypt during the 7 years of plenty. And let them collect all the food of these coming beneficial years, and let them gather the grain under Pharaoh's hand, food in the cities, and keep it. Thus the food will remain as a reserve for the land for the 7 years of famine which will be in the land of Egypt, so that the land will not be destroyed by the famine. The matter pleased Pharaoh and all his servants. So Pharaoh said to his servants, Will we find anyone like this, a man in whom there is the Spirit of God? Then Pharaoh said to Yosef, Since God has let you know all this, there is no one as understanding and as wise as you. You shall be appointed over my household, and through your command all my people shall be nourished. Only with the throne will I be greater than you. So Pharaoh said to Yosef, Look, I have appointed you over the entire land of Egypt. And Pharaoh removed his ring from his hand and placed it on Yosef's hand, and he attired him with raiment of fine linen, and he placed the golden chain around his neck. And he had him ride in his chariot of second rank, and they called out before him, This is the king's patron, appointing him over the entire land of Egypt. And Pharaoh said to Yosef, I am Pharaoh. Besides you, no one may lift his hand or foot in the entire land of Egypt. And Pharaoh named Yosef Zephaniah Paneach, and he gave him Asenat, the daughter of Potiphera, the governor of On, for a wife. And Yosef went forth over the land of Egypt. And Yosef was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. And Yosef went out from before Pharaoh and passed through the entire land of Egypt. And in the 7 years of plenty, the inhabitants of the land gathered food by handfuls. And he collected all the food of the 7 years that was in the land of Egypt, and he placed food in the cities, the food of the field surrounding the city he put within it. And Yosef gathered grain like the sand of the sea in great abundance, until one stopped counting because there was no number. And to Yosef were born 2 sons before the year of the famine set in, whom Asenat, the daughter of Potiphera, the governor of On, bore to him. And Yosef named the firstborn Manasseh, for God had caused me to forget all my toil and all my father's house. And the second one he named Ephraim, for God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. And the 7 years of plenty that were in the land of Egypt were finished, and the 7 years of famine began, as Yosef had said, and there was famine in all the lands, but throughout the land of Egypt there was bread. When the entire land of Egypt hungered, the people cried out to Pharaoh for bread. But Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, "Go to Yosef, what he tells you do." Now the famine spread over all the face of the land, and Yosef opened all the storehouses in which there was grain, and he sold it to the Egyptians, and the famine intensified in the land of Egypt. And all the inhabitants of the land came to Egypt to Yosef to purchase, for the famine had intensified in the entire land. Yaakov saw there was grain being sold in Egypt. So Yaakov said to his sons, "Why do you appear satiated?" And he said, "Behold, I have heard that there is grain being sold in Egypt. Go down there and buy us some from there, so that we will live and not die." So Yosef's 10 brothers went down to buy grain from Egypt. But Yosef's brother Benjamin, Yaakov did not send with his brothers, because he said, "Lest misfortune befall him." So the sons of Israel came to purchase amongst those who came, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. Now Yosef was ruler of the land. It was he who sold grain to the entire populace of the land, and Yosef's brothers came and prostrated themselves to him with their faces to the ground. Now Yosef saw his brothers, and he recognized them, but he made himself a stranger to them, and he spoke to them harshly. And he said to them, "Where do you come from?" And they said, "From the land of Canaan, to purchase food." Now Yosef recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. And Yosef remembered the dreams that he had dreamed about them, and he said to them, "You are spies. You have come to see the nakedness of the land." And he said to them, And they said to him, "No, my master, your servants have come to buy food. We are all sons of one man. We are honest. Your servants were never spies." But he said to them, "No, but you have come to see the nakedness of the land." And they said, "We, your servants, are 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And behold, the youngest is with our father today, and one is gone." And Yosef said to them, "This is just what I have spoken to you, saying you are spies. With this you shall be tested. By Pharaoh's life you shall not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you and let him fetch your brother, and you will be in prison, so that your words will be tested whether truth is with you. And if not, as Pharaoh lives, you are spies." And he put them in prison for 3 days. On the 3rd day Yosef said to them, "Do this and live. I fear God. If you are honest, your one brother will be confined in your prison, and you go bring the grain for your hunger of your households, and bring your youngest brother to me, so that your words may be verified, and you will not die." And they did so. And they said to one another, "Indeed, we are guilty for our brother, that we witnessed the distress of his soul when he begged us, and we did not listen. That is why this trouble has come upon us." And Reuben answered them, saying, "Didn't I tell you, saying, 'Do not sin against the lad'? But you did not listen. Behold, his blood too is being demanded." They did not know that Yosef understood, for the interpreter was between them. And he turned away from them and wept. Then returned to them and spoke to them, and he took Shimon from amongst them and imprisoned him before their eyes. And Yosef commanded, and they filled their vessels with grain, and he commanded to return their money to each one's sack, and to give them provisions for the journey. And he did so for them. And they loaded their grain upon their donkeys, and they went away from there. The one opened his sack to give fodder to his donkey at the lodging place, and he saw his money there. There it was, in the mouth of his sack. And he said to his brothers, "My money has been returned, and indeed here it is in my sack." Their hearts sank, and trembling they turned to one another, saying, "What is this that God has done to us?" And they came to Yaakov their father to the land of Canaan. And they told him all that had befallen them, saying, "The master of the land, spoke to us harshly, and he accused us of spying on the land. And we said to him, 'We are honest, we were never spies. We are 12 brothers, the sons of our father. One is gone, and today the youngest is with our father in the land of Canaan.' And the master of the land, said to us, 'With this I will know that you are honest. Leave one of your brothers with me, and what is needed for the hunger of your households take and go. And bring your youngest brother to me, so that I will know that you are not spies, that you are honest. Then I will give you your brother, and you may travel around in the land.' And it came to pass that they were emptying their sacks, and behold, each one's bundle of money was in his sack. They saw the bundles of their money, they and their father, and they became frightened. And their father Yaakov said to them, 'You have bereaved me. Yosef is gone, and Shimon is gone, and you want to take Benjamin. All these troubles have come upon me.' And Reuben spoke to his father, saying, 'You may put my 2 sons to death if I don't bring him, Benjamin, to you. Put him into my hands, and I will return him to you.' But he, Yaakov, said, 'My son shall not go down with you, because his brother is dead, and he alone is left. And if misfortune befalls him on the way you are going, you will bring down my gray hair in sorrow to the grave.' But the hunger was severe in the land, and it came to pass, when they finished eating the grain that they had brought from Egypt, that their father said to them, Go back and buy us a little food. But Yehuda spoke to him, saying, The man warned us repeatedly, saying, You shall not see my face if your brother is not with you. If you send our brother with us, we will go down and buy food for you. But if you do not send him, we will not go down, because the man said to us, You shall not see my face if your brother is not with you. And Israel said, Why have you harmed me by telling the man that you have another brother? They said, The man asked about us and about our family, saying, Is your father still alive? Do you have a brother? And we told him according to these words. Could we have known that he would say, Bring your brother down? And Yehuda said to Israel his father, Send the lad with me, and we will get up and go, and we will live and not die, both we and you, and also our young children. I will guarantee him, from my hand you can demand him. If I do not bring him to you and stand him up before you, I will have sinned against you forever. For had we not tarried by now, we would have already returned twice. So Israel therefore said to them, If so, then do this. Take some of the choice products of the land in your vessels, and take down to the man as a gift a little balm and a little honey, wax and lotus, pistachios and almonds. And take double the money in your hands, and the money that was returned in the mouth of your sacks you shall return in your hands. Perhaps it was an error. And take your brother, and get up, go back to the man. And may the Almighty God grant you compassion before the man, and he will release you and your brother and Benjamin. And as for me, as I am bereaved, I am bereaved. So the men took this gift, and they took double the money in their hands and Benjamin, and they got up and went down to Egypt and stood before Yosef. I'm going to pause there because I have an obligation to attend to. So this is part uno. Greetings, we're back. A wee bit of a pause, and I'm going to take this opportunity to give some background explanation additionally. And I know it's right in the middle of this. I'm uncertain how enthralling the story is at the moment. I recognize, it's scripture, so people might be off-put by that, but it's actually it's drama. It's a soap opera, and so I'm going to take this opportunity to in this pause to kind of explain some of what's happening and the significance of that, of why certain things, certain components of it are significant. So Yaakov, Israel, it's the same dude. He flees. This thing keeps going in and out. He flees from his house, from his father's house, Yitzhak, because he stole the inheritance from his brother. So, and his brother was threatened to kill him. So he went out into the wilderness and went to find shelter and refuge with his uncle Lavan, who was his more's brother. And so Lavan accepts him into the household, and they make an arrangement. Yaakov, I'll just say Yaakov at this point. Yaakov falls in love with his cousin, Lavan's daughter, who is Rachel, Rachel. And so Lavan and Yaakov agreed for Yaakov to work for Lavan for 7 years in order to marry Rachel. And then after he does that, and they seem like 7 minutes because it was such a joy. He on the wedding night, after the feast and celebration, everybody gets drunk. Then they go into the marital chamber, and lo and behold, Lavan sends the elder daughter, Leah, who Yaakov wasn't interested in, to that. But Yaakov is drunk and everything else, and so whatever, and he consummates the marriage with Leah. Ha ha. And so he's like, wait. He wakes up and he's like, oh, what happened? And so Lavan says, we can't marry the younger daughter before the older daughter. But if you keep working for another 7 years, then I'll give you the younger daughter as well. So he's like, okay. So he does, and so he works for 14 years. And then after that, he works for another 7 years after that. So 21 years. And Lavan just keeps on cheating him and everything else like that. So eventually he leaves. Before I get to that, but he has children with both Leah and Rachel. And so Rachel is barren. Rachel is the favored wife. She's the one that Yaakov loves. Leah is the elder daughter, the elder sister, and is his wife, and so he honors her, but he loves Rachel. But Rachel has no children. She doesn't get pregnant. Meanwhile, Leah is having sons and sons and sons. And so those are who the elder sons are of Yaakov, are those sons from Leah. And after Rachel sees that she's not having children, then she gives Yaakov her maidservant to be a wife and to have children through her. And so she has sons, and then Leah does the same thing, gives Yaakov her maidservant, and her maidservant has sons. So all these women, 3 women, have children with Yaakov, except for Rachel, his favorite wife. Then all of a sudden, by that point he has 10 children, 10 sons, by the 3 women, and eventually, after some things happen, Rachel becomes pregnant. She has a son, and that is who Yosef is. So that's why Yosef is his favored son. It's his eldest son from the woman that he loves in life. And so, but he's way younger than all the other older brothers, and so eventually, Yaakov returns to his land, and he's redeemed. He squashes the beef with his brother, and his brother actually leaves voluntarily on his own. And so Yaakov is kind of running things back in the joint, lightweight. And so he has these sons now, and he has this wealth. He's done well for himself. God blesses him, and so he has all this wealth and everything. But now it's less of the story of Yaakov, and it's increasingly the story of the brothers and the inheritance. Now, in that first portion, there's the talk about Reuben, like the sandwich. Reuben is the Hebrew pronunciation. He's the eldest. So usually, all the inheritance goes primarily to the eldest son. However, Reuben actually sleeps with one of Yaakov's wives, and so bad. So he's not the favorite any further. And Yehuda is the next one who steps up. And so that's who is featured in the beginning of this, and that's one of the reasons why there's that segue of what happens with Yehuda, and as a matter of fact, side note, that segue, that's actually the lineage in where Jesus is born. Peretz is the ancestor of Jesus, as well as David and Solomon additionally. So that's one of the reasons why that's included within the story, and it's a soap opera. So anyways, there's this competition between the brothers. So Reuben doesn't have the birthright or the rightful inheritance, and Yosef is the favored son. Oh, Benjamin, who's also mentioned in that as well. Benjamin is the second son to Rachel. So Benjamin is Yosef's full brother, because Rachel has a second son, and it's actually in giving birth to Benjamin that Rachel passes away. So that's why Benjamin and Yosef are so special to Yaakov. And so when Yaakov sends Yosef to the field to meet up with his brothers, who are older than him and everything else, and then the report comes back that Yosef died. Wow, that's devastating for him. He made the special rainbow-colored coat and everything for him, and now Yosef, the report is his passing. And so now, as important as Yosef was before, now Benjamin is that even further important. And so that's why he doesn't even go to Egypt at all at the beginning, because he's not even going to, Yaakov's not going to even risk that. So those are all the elements going on. So that's what's happening in that conversation between Yaakov and his sons when they're trying to convince him to let them go with Benjamin back to Egypt, and why Yosef is giving him a hard time and everything else like that. So that's the story. I'm sticking to it. Also, I provide that Yosef Aveinu, I am a descendant of Yosef. Now, I throw that in there as well. People might say, how you know that, this and the other? How does anyone know anything in this life? But that's another story. But it's one of the reasons why this resonates significantly. But there are additional elements as well that I'm intending to get to, but I want to finish the story. So we're about halfway through. Yeah. You can already tell by the length of the video how long it is, because I plan to, actually I don't know if I'm going to be able to edit this joint and bring it together, but we shall see. So anyways, just as an FYI, I said a concluding blessing after I concluded the first portion. And I've said a blessing in beginning this one as well. So I just give that as an FYI. when we were last with the ancestors, um, Yosef recognized his brothers. His brothers did not recognize Yosef. He spoke harshly to them, sent them away, but gave them money in their bags as well. So now it looks like they're cheats. Like what he was saying was true. So now they feel a further obligation to like go back and go back. We're very humbled. And so Yosef agrees to send them back. Very, very reluctantly, but says, well, you know what? Bring these other items with you to find favor. Because, as the rabbis say, quiet is kept. Yaakov actually has an inclination that it's Yosef who's doing all this. But that's one of like the undercurrent stories, the unspoken stories from the Torah. It's part of the Talmud, the verbal tradition. So, anyways, that's where things last leave. And so right now we are at the point where the brothers return to Egypt. Shimon, just as a side note, Shimon was also one of the elder brothers. And hey, all right, how about yourself, bro? All right. And so Shimon was one of the elder brothers, and he's actually in the prison at this moment in Egypt because Yosef held him as kind of like as a ransom. Now, again, the rabbis say that one of the reasons why Yosef does that is because Shimon is a head knocker. And so he knew, like, for him to be able to do anything, like, he would have to neutralize Shimon. So he found a way of like getting Shimon to be in prison in a voluntary kind of sense. Because there's other stories as well that precipitate this of like where Shimon did some nasty business, along with Levi, but that's another story. So that's where we are. Yosef is number 2 in Egypt. He rose through the ranks through interpreting dreams and having favor with God. He's second to Pharaoh. There's a famine all around the land. Yosef's the cat that's got the piles of grain for everybody. The famine is in Canaan and the neighboring lands as well, where Yaakov, his father, is staying. So Yaakov sends back his sons to get additional grain because they're running on E at the moment. And so Shimon is locked up. Benjamin rolled with them because it's like that at this point. And Yehuda is kind of like the one in charge of the brothers, and so they just arrived back at the doorstep of Yosef in Egypt, and that's where we find ourselves in the sequence of this narrative. So I'm going to repeat the line that I concluded with on the previous portion, and we are rolling. Here it is. So just as FYI, this is beginning on chapter 43, verse 15. I ain't going to translate because you speak Espanol. Even my modest pronunciation. So I've recited the blessing and we are continuing on. So the men took this gift, and they took double the money in their hands and Benjamin, and they got up and went down to Egypt and stood before Yosef. When Yosef saw Benjamin with them, he said to the overseer of his house, "Bring the men into the house and give orders to slaughter an animal and to prepare, for the men will eat with me at lunch." The man did as Yosef had said, and the man brought the men into Yosef's house. Now the men were frightened because they had been brought into Yosef's house, and they said, "On account of the money that came back in our sacks at first, we are brought to roll upon us, and to fall upon us, and to take us as slaves and our donkeys as well." So they drew near the man who was over Yosef's house, and they spoke to him at the entrance of the house. And they said, "Please, my master, we came down at first to purchase food, and it came to pass when we came to the lodging place that we opened our sacks, and behold, each man's money was in the mouth of his sack, and we returned it in our hands. And we brought down other money in our hands to purchase food. We do not know who put our money into our sacks." And he said, "Peace to you, fear not. Your God and the God of your father gave you a treasure in your sacks. Your money came to me." And he brought Shimon out to them. Then the man brought the brothers into Joseph's house, and he gave them water, and they washed their feet, and he gave fodder to their donkeys, and they prepared the gift until Yosef would come at lunchtime, for they heard that they would eat bread. And Yosef came home, and they brought him the gift that was in their hands into the house, and they prostrated themselves to him to the ground. He inquired after the well-being, and he said, after their well-being, and he said to them, is your elderly far, whom you mentioned well? Is he still alive? And they said, Your servant, our far, is well. He is still alive. And they bowed and prostrated themselves. And he lifted his eyes and saw Benjamin, his brother, the son of his Mor. And he said, Is this your little brother, whom you told me about? And he said, May God favor you, my son. And Yosef hastened, for his mercy was stirred towards his brother. And he wanted to weep. So he went into the room, and he wept there. And he washed his face and came out, and he restrained himself, and said, Serve the food. And they set for him separately, and for them separately, and for the Egyptians who ate with him separately, because the Egyptians could not eat food with the Hebrews, because it is an abomination to the Egyptians. They sat before him, the firstborn according to his age, and the youngest according to his age, and the men looked at each other in astonishment. And he had portions brought to them from before him, and Benjamin's portion was 5 times as large as the portions of any of them, and they drank and became intoxicated with him. Then he commanded the overseer of his house, saying, Fill the men's sacks with food as much as they can carry, and put each man's money into the mouth of his sack. And my goblet, the silver goblet, put into the mouth of the sack of the youngest, and his purchase money. And he did according to Yosef's words which he had spoken. The Matan, the AM, became light, and the men were sent on their way, they and their donkeys. They had exited the city, but had not gone distantly, when Yosef said to the overseer of his house, Get up, pursue the men, and when you overtake them, say to them, Why have you repaid benevolence with evil? Is not this the one my master drinks from? Why, he even divins with it. You have done evil by the way you have acted. He overtook them, and he said these words to them. And they said to him, Why should my master say such words as these? Distant be it from your servants to do a thing like this. Behold, the money we found in the mouth of our sacks we returned to you from the land of Canaan. So how could we steal from your master's house silver or gold? Whichever one of your servants with whom it is found shall die, and also we will be slaves to my master. And he said, Now indeed, so it is as you have spoken. But the one with whom it is found shall be my slave, and you shall be cleared. So they hastened, and each one lowered his sack to the ground, and each one opened his sack. He searched, he started with the eldest, and finished with the youngest, and the goblet was found in Benjamin's sack. So they rent their garments, and each one loaded his donkey, and they returned to the city. And Yehudah and his brothers came to Yosef's house, and he was still there, and they fell before him upon the ground. And Yosef said to them, What is this deed that you have committed? Don't you know that a person like me practices divination? And Yehudah said, What shall we say to my master? What shall we speak, and how shall we exonerate ourselves? God has found your servants' iniquity. Behold, we are my master's servants, both we and the one in whose possession the goblet has been found. But he said, Distant be it from me to do this. The man in whose possession the goblet was found, he shall be my slave. But as for you, you go up in peace to your far. Then Yehudah approached him and said, Please, my master, let now your servant speak something into my master's ear, and let not your wrath be kindled against your servant, for you are like Pharaoh. My master asked his servant, saying, Have you a far or a brother? And we said to my master, We have an old far and a young child of his old age, and his brother is dead, and he is left alone of his Mor, and his far loves him. And you said to your servants, Bring him down to me, and I will set my eyes upon him. And we said to my master, The boy cannot leave his far, for if he leaves his far, he will die. If he leaves his far, he will die. And you said to your servants, If your youngest brother does not come down with you, you will not see my face again. And it came to pass, when we went up to your servant, my far, and we told him the words of my master, that our far said, Go back, buy us a little food. But we said, We cannot go down. Only if our youngest brother is with us will we go down. For we cannot see the man's face if our youngest brother is not with us. And your servant, my far, said to us, You know that my wife bore me 2 children. The one went away from me, and I said, He has surely been torn to portions, and I have not seen him since. Now if I take this one too away from me, if you take this one too away from me, and misfortune befalls him, you will bring down my hoary head in misery to the grave. And now when I come to your servant my far, and the boy is not with us, since his soul is attached to the boy's soul, it will come to pass, when he sees that the boy is gone, he will die, and your servants will have brought down the hoary head of your servant our far in grief to the grave. For your servant assumed responsibility for the boy from my far, saying, If I do not bring him to you, I will have sinned against my far forever. So now please let your servant stay instead of the boy as a slave to my master, and may the boy go up with his brothers. For how will I go up to my far if the boy is not with me? Let me not see the misery that will befall my far. Now Yosef could not bear all those standing beside him, and he called out, "Take everyone away from me." So no one stood with him when Yosef made himself known to his brothers. And he wept out loud, so the Egyptians heard, and the house of Pharaoh heard. And Yosef said to his brothers, "I am Yosef. Is my father still alive?" But his brothers could not answer him because they were startled by his presence. Then Yosef said to his brothers, "Please come closer to me." And they drew closer. And he said, "I am your brother Yosef, whom you sold into Egypt. But now do not be sad, and let it not trouble you that you sold me here. For it is to preserve life that God sent me before you. For already 2 years of famine have passed in the midst of the land, and for another 5 years there will be neither plowing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to make for you a remnant in the land, and to preserve it for you for a great deliverance. And now you did not send me here, but God. And Adonai made me a pharaoh to Pharaoh, a master over all his household, and ruler over the entire land of Egypt. Hasten and go up to my pharaoh and say to him, so said your son Yosef, God has made me a master over all the Egyptians. Come down to me, do not tarry. And you shall dwell in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near to me, you and your children and your grandchildren and your flocks and your cattle and all that is yours. And I will sustain you there, for there are still 5 years of famine, lest you become impoverished, you and your household and all that is yours. And behold, your eyes see, as well as the eyes of my brother Benjamin, that it is my mouth speaking to you. And you shall tell my pharaoh of all my honor in Egypt, and all that you have seen, and you shall hasten and bring my pharaoh down here. And he fell on his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept on his neck. And he kissed all his brothers and wept over them, and afterwards his brothers spoke with him. And the voice was heard in Pharaoh's house, saying, Joseph's brothers have come, and it pleased Pharaoh and his servants. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, tell your brothers, do this, load up your beasts, and go, enter the land of Canaan, and take your pharaoh and your households, and come to me, and I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you will eat the fat of the land. And you, Joseph, have been commanded to tell them, do this, take yourselves wagons from the land of Egypt, for you, your young children, and for your wives, and you shall carry your pharaoh and come. And let your eye not be concerned about your utensils, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours. And the sons of Israel did so. And Joseph gave them wagons by Pharaoh's orders, and he gave them provisions for the way. He gave them all to each one several changes of clothes, and to Benjamin he gave 300 portions of silver and 5 changes of clothes. And to his pharaoh he sent the following: 10 he-donkeys carrying of the best of Egypt, and 10 she-donkeys carrying grain, bread, and other food for his pharaoh for the way. And he sent off his brothers, and they went, and he said to them, do not quarrel on the way. So they went up from Egypt, and they came to the land of Canaan to their pharaoh Yaakov. And they told him, saying, Joseph is still alive. And they told him that he ruled over the entire land of Egypt, and his heart changed, for he did not believe them. And they told him all of Joseph's words that he said to them, and he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent to carry him, and the spirit of their pharaoh Yaakov was revived. And Israel said, enough, my son Joseph is alive. I will go and see him before I die. And Israel and all that was his set out and came to Beersheba, and he slaughtered sacrifices to the God of his pharaoh Yitzhak. And God said to Israel in visions of the night, and Adonai said, Yaakov, Yaakov. And he said, here I am. And Adonai said, I am God, the God of your pharaoh. Do not be afraid of going down to Egypt, for there I will make you into a great nation. I will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also bring you up, and Joseph will place his hand on your eyes. And Yaakov arose from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried their pharaoh Yaakov and their young children and their wives in the wagons Pharaoh had sent to carry him. And they took their livestock and their possessions that they had acquired in the land of Canaan, and they came to Egypt, Yaakov and all his descendants with him. His sons and his sons' sons with him, his daughters and his sons' daughters, and all his descendants he brought with him to Egypt. And these are the names of the children of Israel who were coming to Egypt. Yaakov and his sons. Yaakov's firstborn was Reuben, and the sons of Reuben were Hanoch and Palu, Hezron and Carmi. And the sons of Shimon were Yemuel, Yamin, Ochad, Yachin, and Zohar, and Saul the son of the Canaanites. And the sons of Levi were Goshan and Kehat and Merari. And the sons of Yehuda were Er, Onan, Shelah, Peretz, and Zerah. Now Er and Onan had died in the land of Canaan, and the sons of Peretz were Hezron and Hamul. And the sons of Issachar were Tola, Puvah, Yob, and Shimron. And the sons of Zebulun were Sered, Elon, and Yalil. These are the sons of Eliah that she bore to Yaakov in Padan Aram, and Dinah his daughter. All the souls of his sons and daughters were 33. And the sons of Gad were Ziphion, Hagi, Shuni, and Ezbon, Eri, Arodi, and Areli. And the sons of Asher were Imnah, Ishvi, and Bria, and Sarah, their sister. And the sons of Bria were Heber and Melchiel. These are the sons of Zilpah, whom Lavan gave to his daughter Leah, and she bore these to Yaakov 16 souls. The sons of Rachel, Yaakov's wife, were Yosef and Benjamin. And to Yosef were born in the land of Egypt, whom Asenat, the daughter of Potipharah, the governor of On, bore to him, Manasseh and Ephraim. And the sons of Benjamin were Bela, Becher, Eshbel, Gera, Naaman, Ehi, and Rosh, Mupim, Hupim, and Ard. These the sons of Rachel, who were born to Yaakov. All the souls were 14. And the sons of Dan, Hushim, and the sons of Naphtali were Yazil, Guni, Yazer, Shilem, and Shilem. These are the sons of Bilhah, whom Lavan had given to his daughter Rachel, and she bore these to Yaakov. All the souls were 7. All the souls coming to Egypt with Yaakov, those descended from him, excluded the wives of Yaakov's sons. All the souls were 66. And Yosef's sons, who were born to him in Egypt, 2 souls. All the souls of the house of Yaakov who came to Egypt were 70. He sent Yehuda ahead of him to Yosef to direct him to Goshen, and they came to the land of Goshen. And Yosef harnessed his chariot, and he went up to meet Israel his father to Goshen, and he appeared to him, and he fell on his neck, and he wept on his neck for a long time. And Israel said to Yosef, I will die this time, since I have seen your face, that you are still alive. Yosef said to his brothers and to his father's household, I will go up and tell Pharaoh, and I will say to him, my brothers and my father's household, who are in the land of Canaan, have come to me. The men are shepherds, for they were always owners of livestock, and their flocks and their cattle, and all they have brought. And if it comes to pass that Pharaoh calls you and asks, what is your occupation? You shall say, your servants have been owners of livestock from our youth until now, but both we and our ancestors, so that you may dwell in the land of Goshen, because all shepherds are abhorrent to the Egyptians. Yosef came and told Pharaoh, and he said, my father and my brothers and their flocks and their cattle and all that is theirs have come from the land of Canaan, and behold, they are in the land of Goshen. And from amongst his brothers he took 5 men, and he presented them before Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to his brothers, what is your occupation? And they said to Pharaoh, your servants are shepherds, both we and our forefathers. And they said to Pharaoh, we have come to sojourn in the land, for your servants' flocks have no pasture, for the famine is severe in the land of Canaan. Now please let your servants dwell in the land of Goshen. And Pharaoh spoke to Yosef, saying, your father and your brothers have come to you. The land of Egypt is open before you. In the best of the land settle your father and your brothers. Let them dwell in the land of Goshen, and if you know that there are capable men amongst them, make them livestock officers over what is mine. So Yosef brought his father Yaakov and stood him before Pharaoh, and Yaakov greeted Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Yaakov, how many are the days of the years of your life? And Yaakov said to Pharaoh, the days of the years of my sojournings are 130 years. The days of the years of my life have been few and miserable, and they have not reached the days of the years of the lives of my forefathers in the days of their sojournings. So Yaakov blessed Pharaoh and left Pharaoh's presence. Yosef settled his father and his brothers, and he gave them property in the land of Egypt, in the best of the land, in the land of Ramses, as Pharaoh had mandated. And Yosef sustained his father and his brothers and his father's entire household with bread according to the young children. Now there was no food in the entire land, for the famine had grown exceedingly severe in the land of Egypt, and the land of Canaan were exhausted because of the famine. And Yosef collected all the money that was found. Warning about storage on this thing. And Yosef collected all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan with the grain that they were buying. And Yosef brought the money into Pharaoh's house. Now the money was depleted from the land of Egypt and from the land of Canaan, and all the Egyptians came to Yosef, saying, give us food. Why should we die in your presence, since the money has been utilized up? And Yosef said, give me your livestock, and I will give you food in return for your livestock, if the money has been used up. So they brought their livestock to Yosef, and Yosef gave them food in return for the horses, and for the livestock in flocks, and in cattle, and in donkeys, and he provided them with food in return for all their livestock in that year. That year ended, and they came to him in the 2nd year, and they said to him, we will not hide from my master, for insomuch as the money and the property and animals have been forfeited to my master, nothing remains before my master except our bodies and our farm and our agrarian land. Why should we die before your eyes, both we and our agrarian land? Buy us and our agrarian land for food, so that we and our agrarian land will be slaves to Pharaoh, and give us seed, so that we live and not die, and the soil will not lie fallow. So Yosef bought all the agrarian land of the Egyptians for Pharaoh, for the Egyptians sold each one his field, for the famine had become too strong for them, and the land became Pharaoh's. And he transferred the populace to the cities from one end of the boundary of Egypt to its other end. Only the agrarian land of the priests he did not buy, for the priests had an allotment from Pharaoh, and they ate their allotment that Pharaoh had given them. Therefore they did not sell their agrarian land. Yosef said to the people, behold, I have bought you and your agrarian land today for Pharaoh. Behold, you have seed, so sow the soil. And it shall be concerning the crops that you shall give 1/5 to Pharaoh, and the remaining 4 parts shall be yours for seed for your fields, for your food, for those in your houses, and for your young children to eat." They replied, "You have saved our lives. Let us find favor in my master's eyes, and we will be slaves to Pharaoh." So Yosef made it a statute to this day concerning the agrarian land of Egypt for the 1/5. Only the agrarian land of the priests alone did not become Pharaoh's. And Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt, in the land of Goshen, and they acquired property in it, and they were prolific and multiplied greatly. I'm going to pause again because I have to make some arrangements. We are resuming. This is part numero tres. So we're at the home stretch, and this is way longer than I was anticipating. I didn't know how long it's going to be, but we're almost there. Continuing on. Conclusion. And Yaakov lived in the land of Egypt for 17 years, and Yaakov's days, the years of his life, were 147 years. When the time drew near for Israel to die, he called his son Yosef and said to him, "If I have now found favor in your eyes, now place your hand beneath my thigh, and you shall deal with me with loving kindness and truth. Do not bury me now in Egypt. I will lie with my forefathers, and you shall carry me out of Egypt, and you shall bury me in their grave." And he said, "I will do as you say." And he said, "Swear to me." So he swore to him, and Israel prostrated himself on the head of the bed. Now it came to pass after these incidents that someone said to Yosef, "Behold, your father is ill." So he took his 2 sons with him, Manasseh and Ephraim. And someone told Yaakov and said, "Behold, your son Yosef is coming to you." And Israel summoned his strength and sat up on the bed. And Yaakov said to Yosef, "Almighty God appeared to me in Luz in the land of Canaan, and God blessed me. And Adonai said to me, Behold, I will make you fruitful and cause you to multiply, and I will make you into a congregation of peoples, and I will give this land to your seed after you for an everlasting inheritance. And now as for your 2 sons who were born to you in the land of Egypt, until I came to you to the land of Egypt, they are mine. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine like Reuben and Shimon. But your children, if you beget any after them, shall be yours. By their brothers' names they shall be called in their inheritance. As for me, when I came from Padan, Rachel died to me in the land of Canaan, on the way when there was still a stretch of land to come to Ephrath, and I buried her on the way to Ephrath, which is Bethlehem. Then Israel saw Joseph's sons, and he said, Who are these? Yosef said to his father, "They are my sons, whom God gave me here." So he said, "Now bring them near to me, so that I may bless them." Now Israel's eyes had become very heavy with age, to the extent that he could not see. So he drew them near to him, and he kissed them and embraced them. And Israel said to Yosef, "I had not expected to see even your face, and behold, God has shown me your children too." And Yosef took them out from upon Yaakov's knees, and he prostrated himself to the ground. And Yosef took them, both Ephraim at his right from Israel's left, and Manasseh at his left from Israel's right, and he brought them near to him. But Israel stretched out his right hand and placed it on Ephraim's head, although he was the younger, and his left hand he placed on Manasseh's head. He guided his hands deliberately, for Manasseh was the firstborn. And he blessed Yosef and said, "God before whom my fathers Abraham and Yitzhak walked, God who sustained me as long as I am alive until this day, may the angel who redeemed me from all harm bless the youths, and may they be called by my name and the name of my fathers Abraham and Yitzhak, and may they multiply abundantly like fish in the midst of the land." And Yosef saw that his father was placing his right hand on Ephraim's head, and it displeased him. So he held up his father's hand to remove it from upon Ephraim's head, to place it on Manasseh's head. And Yosef said to his father, "Not so, father, for this one is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head." But his father refused, and he said, "I know, my son, I know. He too will become a people, and he too will be great. But his younger brother will be greater than he, and his children's fame will fill the nations." So he blessed them on that day, saying, "With you Israel will bless, saying, May God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh." And he placed Ephraim before Manasseh. And Israel said to Yosef, "Behold, I am going to die, and God will be with you, and Adonai will return you to the land of your forefathers. And I have given you one portion over your brothers, which I took from the hand of the Amorite with my sword and with my bow." Yaakov called for his sons and said, "Gather, and I will tell you of what will happen to you at the end of days. Gather and listen, sons of Yaakov, and listen to Israel your father. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my strength, and the first of my might. You should have been superior in rank and superior in power. You have the restlessness of water, therefore you shall not have superiority, for you ascended upon your father's couch, and you profaned Adonai who ascended upon my bed. And you profaned Adonai who ascended upon my bed. Shimon and Levi are brothers, stolen instruments are their weapons. Let my soul not enter their council, my honor you shall not join in their assembly. For in their wrath they killed a man, and with their will they hamstrung a bull.
Cursed be their wrath, for it is mighty, and their anger, because it is harsh. I will separate them throughout Yaakov, and I will scatter them throughout Israel. Yehuda, as for you, your brothers will not acknowledge you. Your hand will be at the nape of your enemies, and you and your father's sons will prostrate themselves to you. A cub and a grown lion is Yehuda. From the prey, my son, you withdrew. He crouched, rested like a lion, and like a lion, who will rouse him? The scepter shall not depart from Yehuda, for the student of the law from between his, nor the student of the law from between his feet, until Shiloh comes, and to him will be a gathering of peoples. He binds his fowl to a vine, and to a tendril he binds his young donkey. He launders his garment with wine, and with the blood of grapes binds his raiment. He is red-eyed from the wine, and white-toothed from milk. Zebulun will dwell on the coast of the seas. He will be at the harbor of the ships, and his boundary will be at Zidon. Issachar is a bony donkey lying between the boundaries. He saw a resting place, that it was beneficial, and the land that it was pleasant, and he bent his shoulder to bear burdens, and he became an indentured laborer. Dan will avenge his people like one, the tribes of Israel. Dan will be a serpent on the road, a viper on the path, which bites the horse's heels, so its rider falls backwards. For your salvation I hope, O Lord. As for Gad, a troop will troop forth from him, and it will troop back in its tracks. From Asher will come rich food, and he will yield regal delicacies. Naphtali is a swift gazelle. He is one who utters beautiful words. A charming son is Yosef, a son charming to the eye. Of the women, each one strode along to see him. They heaped bitterness upon him, and became quarrelsome. Yea, archers despised him. But his bow was strongly established, and his arms were gilded from the hands of the mighty one of Yaakov. And there he sustained the rock of Israel. From the God of your far, and Adonai will help you, and with the Almighty, and Adonai will bless you with the blessings of the heavens above, the blessings of the deep lying below, the blessings of far and more. The blessings of your far surpass the blessings of my parents, the ends of the everlasting hills. May they come upon Yosef's head, may they come to Yosef's head, and to the crown of the head of the one who was separated from his brothers. Benjamin is a wolf, he will prey. In the Matan he will devour plunder, and in the evening he will divide the spoil. All these are the 12 tribes of Israel, and this is what their far spoke to them, and blessed them, each man according to his blessing he blessed them. And he commanded them and said to them, I will be brought into my people, bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, and the cave that is in the field of Machpelah, which is before Mamre in the land of Canaan, which field Abraham bought from Ephron the Hittite for burial property. There they buried Abraham and his wife Sarah. There they buried Yitzhak and his wife Rivka, and there I buried Leah. The purchase of the field and the cave therein was from the sons of Het. And Yaakov concluded commanding his sons, and he drew his legs up into the bed and expired, and was brought into his people. Yosef fell on his far's face, and he wept over him and kissed him. And Yosef commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his far, and the physicians embalmed Israel. And 40 days were completed for him, and so are the days of embalming completed, and the Egyptians wept over him for 70 days. When the days of his weeping had passed, Yosef spoke to Pharaoh's household, saying, If now I found favor in your eyes, speak now in Pharaoh's ears, saying, My father adjured me, saying, Behold, I am going to die in my grave, which I dug for myself in the land of Canaan. There you shall bury me. So now please let me go up and bury my father in return. And Pharaoh said, Go up and bury your father as he adjured you. So Yosef went up to bury his father, and all Pharaoh's servants, the elders of his house, and all the elders of the land of Egypt went up with him. And Yosef's entire household, and his brothers and his father's household, only their children and their flocks and cattle did they leave in the land of Goshen. And chariots and horsemen also went up with him, and the camp was very numerous. And they came to the threshing floor of the thorn bushes, which is on the other side of the Jordan. And there they conducted a very great and impressive eulogy, and he made for his father a grieving of 7 days. The Canaanites, the inhabitants of the land, saw the grieving at the threshing floor of the thorn bushes, and they said, This is an intense grieving for the Egyptians. Therefore they named it Abel Mizraim, Egypt grieves, which is on the other side of the Jordan. And his sons did to him just as he had commanded them. And his sons carried him to the land of Canaan, and they buried him in the cave of the field of Machpelah, which field Abraham had bought for burial property from Ephron the Hittite before Mamre. And Yosef returned to Egypt, he and his brothers, and all who had gone up with him to bury his far, and after he had buried his far. Now Joseph's brothers saw that their far had died, and they said, Perhaps Joseph will hate us and return us all the evil that we did to him. So they commanded messengers to go to Joseph to say, Your far commanded us before this death, saying, So shall you say to Joseph, Please forgive now your brothers' transgressions and their sin, for they did evil to you. Now please forgive the transgression of the servants of the God of your father. Yosef wept when they spoke to him. His brothers also went and fell before him, and they said, Behold, we are your slaves. But Yosef said to them, Don't be afraid, for am I instead of God? Indeed, you intended evil against me, but God designed it for benevolence, in order to bring about what is at present, to keep a great populace alive. So now don't fear, I will sustain you and your small children. And he comforted them and spoke to their hearts. So Yosef dwelt in Egypt, he and his father's household, and Yosef lived 110 years. Yosef saw children of a third generation born in Ephraim. Also the sons of Machir, the son of Manasseh, were born on Yosef's knees. Yosef said to his brothers, I am going to die. God will surely remember you and take you up out of this land to the land of that Adonai swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Yaakov. And Yosef adjured the children of Israel, saying, God will surely remember you, and you shall take up my bones out of here. And Yosef died at the age of 110 years, and they embalmed him, and he was placed into the coffin in Egypt.
That's the story. I'm sticking to it. One of the reasons why I share that is there are obviously so many lessons and teachings, and additionally, but one of the focal points at the moment that I share is the notion of purpose. I mentioned before that I am a son of Yosef, and so the narrative significantly resonates with me, particularly because even in contemporary experience, there are very strong similarities and congruences that I personally experienced and that my forebears experienced, that are along the inheritance, the heritage, the lineage, the experience of Yosef. There's that. Now, amidst all that, I mean, Yosef comes in and he's hated by his brothers. His brothers kidnap him, throw him in a pit, getting ready to kill him, then sell him off into slavery. He gets sold into slavery in a distant land, and then the wife of the household tries to seduce him and lies against him. So then he gets from slavery to imprisonment, and so the whole time, like, he maintains like a positive disposition, like, yo, all right, here it is. We got to make the best of it. Let's roll. And so then, sure enough, he receives the blessings, and he ascends to be the number two man, numero dos, in Egypt. And there's a redemption, and even further than being like a big head honcho or whatever, and rolling deep at whatever in Egypt. It's a matter of like recognizing that even that has a purpose, and that all of that he experiences is in preparation for the famine that is being experienced, and getting ready to receive his family, his far, and the rest of his brothers. So she looks like a tough cookie. Cheers. So that's the consideration, that there's a mindfulness of that purpose, and it's with that he maintains a balance, a conscientiousness, and reassurance in going through the trials and tribulations, and not getting angry about it either, not like hating his master, not hating the prison guard, not hating his brothers or anything else, just like, this is for a reason, there's a purpose to this. So that's something that's very significant in my experience in life, because I've done been through some things in this life, and it's tenacious for years and years and years, in many different ways, many different levels, and it can be frustrating and trying the patience. And additionally, but what I've also strived to like be mindful of is like, there's a purpose, and understanding like there's a reason why this is happening, and instead of getting angry, instead of taking it personal or whatever else, just to understand the reason. And that goes for like when people come at us wrong, with BS, lie to us, cheat us, harm us, hurt us, whatever. Understand the purpose for that. There's a greater purpose being served, and even like in our relationships, whether it's with previous boyfriends, girlfriends, and additionally, and thinking like being enveloped and dedicated, thinking that like that's it, and that's what it's going to be, and then come to find out betrayal or just a growing distance away, or going in having different priorities or interests or paths or whatever else. Whatever the situation is, there's a purpose for that, and in it's not a matter of being wrong or like making a mistake. Like that relationship serves a purpose, and there's no end to any relationship. The relationship continues in one way or another through the rest of our lives in one way or another. So it's a matter of like, it might be different than what we were anticipating, it might be different than what we initially wanted, and additionally, but then it's a matter of like, well, was what we wanted actually what we were supposed to have? And so the consideration is to understand what we were supposed to learn in that relationship. What does that relationship provide us with? What are the experiences, and additionally, that help us to prepare for the next relationship, for the next experience, to help others in their relationship accordingly. And so there's no futility in life. There's always lessons. There's always a purpose. And I mentioned before that notion of there's the purpose in terms of like reason for things happening, but then again, a purpose for each of us in life, like a guidance, a calling, a mission, a task, for us to complete, for us to continue completing within this life. And when we have an awareness of that's something greater than ourselves, a service to something greater than ourselves and others beyond ourselves, when we have a keen sense of that purpose, then it's easier to have patience to find the mini purpose, like the purpose in everything that happens around us. And so we say, oh, okay, wait a minute, this is going to prepare me to do what I have to get to next. So anyways, again, that applies to everything within our lives. And so that's one of the reasons why I share that. I speak before about the purpose. That you communicate in terms of being a bridge amidst the respective cultures and peoples of your heritage, and how I share a similar purpose and as well as a congruent purpose. I share the same purpose as well as similar and congruent. It's different, but it's the same, and it's actually complementary as well, in addition to being cooperative. So anyways, that's one of the things that I share. At the risk, my energy level is it takes a lot. So, and it was a little bit longer, a little bit lengthier than what I was thinking, but it is what it is. And actually, I got another one. Actually, I have another story. It's way shorter. Gonna get it. So, this one is from the Buddha. And it's actually just an excerpt from one of the suttas, and it was actually in the reading. So each week I read a portion of each of these scriptures, so that by the end of the year I complete at least one entire reading of each one. And so at this moment we're a little bit over halfway through the cycle, and this past week, every Shabbat, every Saturday, I complete a reading aloud. And so this past Saturday, this past Shabbat, yesterday, this portion, this excerpt, this little anecdote was in the reading from the Buddha, from the Digha Nikaya, the long discourses of the Buddha. And so it's just like a couple paragraphs, but it's actually very interesting. So I guess it's appropriate for me to like set the scene. So the lengthy discourses of the Buddha, the Digha Nikaya, is basically just a collection of talks that the Buddha had with lots of different people, kings, other priests, other ascetics, his students, members of the Sangha, the other bhikshus, bhikshus and bhikkhunis, but just people who were like asking him questions about life, about the universe. They didn't talk about God too much because God has a different kind of, there's different language when it comes to God. And also, just as a reference, like I believe in God, in one God, and I believe God is Tao. I believe that many different traditions have a different way of describing God and understanding God, but it's all the same. It's the ultimate reality. It's the ultimate truth. It's the ultimate authority. Um, it is the universal love. Now, the one significant difference that I find amongst different traditions is that in some Eastern traditions, God is referred to as like a nature, a law, a truth. So it's not personified, like Tao, like Dharma, and so that's how I believe in God. And in the West, in the Abrahamic faith, God is personalized, and talk about the finger of God, the hand of God, the will of God. And so it's very personalized, and oftentimes there's masculine rhetoric that's utilized to describe God. I don't do that. I don't utilize the masculine rhetoric because it's like I'm gonna be reverent, so I'm not gonna make that reference. But like I say God, and I say God, and when I'm reading scriptures and the word there's a masculine adjective to describe him, or a pronoun I should say. That's the actual correct grammatical term. When it's a male pronoun, I just say God. And so, anyways, that's that. Now, but in terms of the personification of God, I do have the tendency of doing that as well. But I also am mindful of like what that is. And so it'd be like saying that tree over there is standing. Is the tree a male, a female? Is it a person? I'm describing it standing because that's how, in the Western sense, we describe things, and so that's how I describe God as well. But I recognize God is like a force. God is beyond the things that we attribute to God. So, anyways, like the Tao begins, Tao Ku Tao Fei Chong Tao. Anyway, so that's that. So in this convo that the Buddha has, there's an angel. Oh, and the things that a lot of people refer to as deities, or utilizing the word God in plural with a small g, I just look at it as angels. That's basically what's being referenced, and there's a whole lot of like theological explanations that go with that, but that's just how we roll. So anyways, there's that, and it's just a matter of being understanding it for what it is, rather than getting caught up in all the like the shibboleth and stances and everything else. So the Buddha is talking to an angel in this joint, and the angel sees the Buddha in a cave meditating, and the angel wants to approach the Buddha because the angels talk to the Buddha as well. And so the angel wants to approach the Buddha, ask some questions, but he knows that because the Buddha is in meditation, it's going to be difficult for him to approach without causing like some undue disturbance. So what he does is he summons, I think it's another angel, Gandhava, to go there first. And Gandhava is a musician. He has a lyre. He plays the strings. And so the big angel, the head angel, says, "Yo, go up near the Buddha and like start playing some music and soften up a little bit so that I can approach." So that's what Gandhava does. So Gandhava plays a song, and this is the song that Gandhava sings. And what's interesting is the Buddha's response. It's actually extremely interesting for a number of reasons. Yet before I say why, I'm going to share the story. And now we're working with battery levels. I've already said the blessing as well, so we're still in that. The blessing can be done with like studying as well, so it's not just a matter of just reading it, it's just a matter of like being in the zone. And it probably would be nice to have this prepped and prearranged, but then that would be too easy. And we don't want things to be easy, do we? Or at least too easy. Right, so. Alright, we got it. So let's set this up again. Very high tech, very high tech, very high tech. So I kind of set the scene already, so this is it. Saka is the king of the angels. So this is what it is. Then said Saka, the king of the angels, to Five Crest the Gandhava, difficult of approach, dear Five Crest, are Tathagatas, to one like me, when they are wrapped in the bliss of meditation, and for that purpose abiding in solitude. But if you were to gain over the Exalted One by your music, then might I afterwards come up and visit him, the Arhat, the Buddha Supreme. So be it, and benevolent luck to you, consented Five Crest, and taking his lyre, he went to the Indra Sal tree cave. On coming there, he thought, thus distant will the Exalted One be neither too distant nor from me, nor too near to me, and he will hear my voice. And he stood on one side and let his lyre be heard, and recited these verses concerning the Awakened One and the Dharma and the Arhats and love. Lady, thy far Timbaro I greet with honor due, O glory of the Soleil, in that he wrought such a thing so nobly fair as thou, O fount divine, fount holy of all my joy. Sweet as the breeze to one fordone with sweat, sweet as a cooling drink to one athirst. So dear art thou, O presence radiant, to me dear as Arhats the Dharma. As medicine bringing ease to one that's sick, as food to starving man, so lady quench as with cooling waters me who am all aflame. Even as an elephant with heat oppressed hies him to some still pool, upon whose face petals and pollen of the lotus float, so would I sink within thy bosom sweet. Even as an elephant fretted by hook dashes unheeded curb and goad aside, so I crazed by the beauty of thy form know not the why and wherefore of my acts. By thee my heart is held in bonds and all bent out of course, nor can I turn me back no further than fish once he hath taken the bait. Within thine arm embrace me, lady, me with thy soft languid eyne embrace, and hold, O nobly fair, this I entreat of thee. Scanty in sooth, O maid of waving locks, was my desire, but now enswelleth I indefinitely great, even as the gifts made by the faithful to the Arahats. Whatever of merit to such holy ones I've wrought, be thou altogether fair, the ripened fruit to fall therefrom to me. Whatever of other merit I have wrought in the wide world, altogether fair, be thou the fruit thereof to fall to me. As the great Sakyan seer, through ecstasy wrapped and intent and self-possessed, doth brood seeking ambrosia, even so do I pursue the quest of thee, O glory of the Soleil. As would that seer rejoice were he to win ineffable enlightenment, so I with thee made one, O fairest, were in bliss. If perchance a boon were granted me by Saka, master of 33 angels, 'tis thee I'd ask of him, lady, so strong my love. And for thy far wisest man, him as a sultry, freshly burgeoning honor for such peerless offspring given. When Five Crests had finished, the Exalted One said to him, the sound of your strings, Five Crests, so harmonizes with that of your song, and the song of your voice with that of the strings, that your lyre does not too much color your song, nor your song too much color your play. Where, Five Crests, did you learn these verses concerning the Awakened One and the Dharma, the Arahats, and love? The Exalted One, my master, was once staying at Uravela, on the bank of the Naranjara River, at the foot of the goatherd's banyan tree, before he attained to enlightenment. Now at that time, master, the lady called Bada, in appearance as Soleil Shine, daughter of Timbaro, king of the Gandhavas, was beloved by me. But that lady, master, was in love with another, Sikadi, son of Matali the charioteer. And since I could not get the lady by any mean whatever, I took my lyre of yellow beluva wood, and going to the abode of Timbaro, king of the Gandhavas, I played my lyre and recited these verses concerning the Awakened One, the Dharma, the Arahats, and love. Lady, thy far Timbaro I greet with honor due, O glory of the Soleil, in that he wrought a thing so nobly fair as thou, O fount holy of all my joy. See, sweet as the breeze to one fordone with sweat, sweet as a cooling drink to one athirst, so dear art thou, O presence radiant, to me, dear as to Arahants the Dharma. As medicine bringing ease to one that's a sick, as food to starving man, so lady quench as with cool waters me who am all aflame. Even as an elephant with heat oppressed hies him to some still pool, upon whose face petals are pollen of the lotus float, so would I sink within thy bosom sweet. Even as an elephant fretted by hook dashes unheeding curb and goad aside, so I crazed by the beauty of thy form know not the why and where of my acts. By thee my heart is held in bonds and all bent out of course, nor can I turn me back no further than fish once he hath taken the bait. So that's the story, and I'm sticking to it. And like I said, it's interesting for a number of reasons. One, yeah, it gets rather like I won't say raunchy, but it gets a little bit very romantic in that joint, in terms of the allegorism, talking about resting in the woman's bosom, and additionally, and for that to wait, the Buddha, huh? So that's one thing, because if you look at all the other discourses, all the talks, it's like about like righteousness and ethics and celibacy in the life of a monastic, and additionally, so here comes this musician dude with his lyre singing this song about this woman that he loves and everything else like that. So how is this like in the Digha Nikaya? That's one thing. Now it's not too deep or whatever, but that's one thing that's interesting. But not even further than that, it's like the Buddha responds favorably to that. The Buddha's like, oh, that's a nice song. Where'd you learn that? Now the Buddha just states matter-of-factly like, well, your voice harmonizes with this, and the string harmonizes with that, and where'd you learn that song? But that effectively is like a sanctioning, like a stamp of approval from the Buddha, and so that's like a huge thing. Like, wait a minute, what happened to like celibacy, this and the other? So obviously the Buddha stays with how the Buddha is, but the Buddha is like unjudgmental about like marriage and household life, and additionally, and so he just like recognizes the efforts, the skill, the references that the musician makes, and so speaks with him that. Now it's right after that the Buddha responds to the song, and the man says like how he had the song, that the king of the angels that solicited the musician in the first place is like, oh, okay, they're talking, I can come up now. So that's kind of like the sequence of that story. So again, I share it because of the I'm stretching my legs while serving as tripod as well. Anyway, I've pretty much said like some of the things of interest. I was talking before about songs and music. The song that you sung on one of your videos, I shared some songs as well. I sang some songs as well. I also listened to some music recently, and I listened to it in a different way, actually. But that might be topic for another convo, because this one's already long as it is. I will say that I'm working on some projects. I share with you in one of the communications I sent to you of being an agent and with some of the works that that I have and that I'm putting together. So have yet to hear from you on that front. I'm actually, it's genuine, and it's not flowery, but all that being said, because of circumstances and conditions, I'm actually looking at soliciting agency with additional people as well, and that's not meant as a double entendre or whatever else, or like a veiled whatever, but I'm just saying, like, in terms of like some of the projects I'm working on in the manuscripts, I'm, because of economic conditions additionally, preparing to like shop it or offer editors and agents to like make it presentable and packageable and additionally. So anyways, I just communicate that as an FYI, because I am mindful that I've shared an offer with you, and in terms of the agency part of it, and without the response, I'm continuing to move with that. So that's an FYI. There's some other things as well, but I think that, again, that's much for the moment, because we got some additional things to do. Miles to go, kilometers. Music also. Yo, I like the music in the most recent video that you had. It's Chinese music. Now, it wasn't traditional. It sounded like traditional music. So I was just wondering what that is, because to be honest, I've looked for traditional Chinese music, and in some of my go-to things for world music, like Putumayo, and additionally, to be honest, don't have a lot of selection when it comes to China. Like, for all around the earth, Middle East, Africa, Asia, or even South Asia, particularly India, the Western Hemisphere native, and additionally, lots of selections, lots of things. But when it comes to East Asia, China, Korea, Japan, There's very few selections. It's like very obviously such. So it's a little bit disappointing, but anyways, it is what it is. And meanwhile, I try to find some things otherwise, because that's part of what I do. So if you have suggestions, that's appreciated as well. And I'm uncertain if I noticed that there were some views of joints that I shared with you within the past week or so. Again, still there's still that fog, and I'm working with the potential, the possibility of the favorable scenario of you watching it, listening to it, considering, and like again, like me having to put in additional work to be increasingly convincing. And intentionally clumsily so, because this is my life, and it's beautiful clumsy, but it's purposeful, but that's what it is. So I ain't trying to be like the putting a pretty package together just for the sake of presentation and then doing the reveal and it's something else. So this is what it is. Now that's one scenario, but there are additional scenarios as well. I noticed that you have there are a number of YouTube channels that have the same kind of name as the one that you recently post on. There's one specifically that I think there was some of the same videos, like duplicate videos. Maybe it was something else that was happening, but anyways, it brings additional kind of like questioning about like what's happening with the situation, and it factors into the different possibilities of catfishing and this, that, and the other. So there's a lot that I have to factor through, and it can be challenging, as I've articulated previously. But like I said, I continue with reaching to you and sharing what I'm able to share. So yeah, I mean, there's lots that I consider sharing and talking about, but I actually initially considered sharing a different story, a briefer story, today about running, because you mentioned numerous cases that you run, and you mentioned that being one of the things that you continue doing amidst the conditions at this moment, and so I thought it beneficial to share a story about running. So a couple stories. I already shared the Katomi one that had to do with running in a certain way, but one that features running. So I thought about sharing that today, but then I thought about the Yosef joint, so I shared the Yosef joint and the Buddha joint. So perhaps running for another day, and actually have some personal running stories, because I used to run years ago, and actually that's how I dropped 100 pounds the first occasion of my life. But that's another story. I just put that out there to help with the recollection. How's the weather over there? Yeah, we got like bluish gray skies, and actually I'm tempting the weather as I keep the books out here, so I'm gonna like skedaddle, and that's much of what I had to share. It seems like the portion I'm recording at the moment is at 37 minutes, and I feel like, I got all the time in the world because it's not an hour yet. But I've already recorded probably over an hour at this moment, so it's probably actually at the hour and 45-minute mark or something like that. 45. Well, anyways, here it is. Cheers. 再见. Adios. Maria Rincon, Wang Sisi, and pronunciation wanting. Love and peace.